Book 3, Chapter 2, Tower of Storms. The storm winds whipped across the moorland, carrying the bite of sea salt and the low groan of distant waves crashing against cliff faces. Morning light struggled through the gray sky, casting everything in a melancholy hue that matched Zyra's mood perfectly. She had barely slept, her dreams filled with flashes of Morthal falling, of waves swallowing him, of harpy talons and banshee wails. She emerged from the tent she shared with Doreen, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders. The familiar weight of dread settled in her chest as she gazed toward the sea and the tempestuous sky. They would return there today, to the place that had claimed Morthal. Her fingers trembled slightly as she smoothed her hair behind her ears, a small gesture that betrayed her nervousness despite her attempts to appear composed.
"Women shouldn't frown so deeply,"
came Karma's voice, startling her from her thoughts.
"It ruins the illusion."
His words carried a peculiar edge, formal yet somehow caustic. Zyra forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes.
"Good morning to you too."
Karma nodded stiffly, keeping a measured distance between them. The man was a contradiction, the way he treated her with formality.
"The lighthouse awaits our justice,"
he said, gesturing toward the distant structure.
"Prepare yourself, Miss Darkmeyer. Today we balance the scales."
Before Zyra could respond, Doreen emerged from the tent, stretching languorously.
"Scales, is it? Our sorceress knows a lot about those, don't you?"
Zyra tensed. Doreen wielded that knowledge, just enough to remind Zyra of the power imbalance between them.
"Breakfast first,"
Balin called from where he was stoking the campfire.
"No vengeance on empty stomachs."
As they gathered around the fire, Doreen suddenly stiffened, her gaze fixed on something beyond the camp.
"Someone's watching us."
They all turned to see a solitary figure standing at the edge of the moorland, rain streaming down its form as it stared at them with unnerving stillness.
"Is that—"
Zyra squinted.
Alara!
She was on her feet and running before she fully registered her own movement, relief flooding through her. The elf had disappeared after Morthal's funeral, and his absence had been yet another weight on her heart. As she approached, however, her steps slowed. Alara looked worse than before. His frame was hunched, his clothing filthy and torn. His eyes held a feverish light that made her stomach clench with unease. Yet when he saw her, he smiled, a broken thing that seemed to crack his face in all the wrong places.
"Eli,"
he whispered, the name slipping from his lips like a prayer.
"You waited for me."
Zyra's heart constricted painfully. His delusion persisted. She was not his sister Eli, yet something in his fragile state made her hesitate to correct him.
Alara,
she said gently, taking his cold hand.
"Come back to camp. You must be hungry."
As she led him back, his free hand drifted to something hidden in the folds of his shirt.
She's not truly Eli yet, not yet, but maybe she could be. Make her ask.
Alara heard the whisper, a venomous thread weaving through his fractured mind.
Hate this false Eli. Claim her. Punish her for not being real. She will be ours.
"I got him."
Alara murmured as they approached the others.
"I got Morthal."
Zyra's steps faltered.
"What?"
"He's with me now,"
Alara said, his fingers caressing whatever lay hidden in his shirt.
"His strength. His devotion."
"Alara,"
Zyra said, forcing brightness into her voice.
"You must never disappear like that again. We were worried sick."
She guided him to the fire, pressing her own rations into his hands.
"Here, eat. We all carry Morthal in our hearts. He'll never be forgotten."
Ilara's gaze drifted beyond her shoulder, focused on something no one else could see.
"His soul will be her shield,"
he whispered. Karma approached, his concern focused on the tactical liability Alara presented.
You all right?
he asked gruffly. Ilara flinched, his fingers tightening around whatever lay hidden in his cloak.
Yeah, I'm better now. But this place is dangerous. I came to make sure Eli returns back home.
Karma's brow furrowed.
Whether Eli gets home or not, do you really think you can handle this?
I go where Eli goes.
Ilara said with sudden intensity.
Just eat and pull yourself together.
Karma said, turning away. Balin, who had been watching the exchange with a concerned frown, muttered,
Not sure there is enough time in the world to pull him together.
The dwarf's words carried more truth than any of them wanted to acknowledge. As they broke camp and began planning their approach to the lighthouse, Zira felt the weight of responsibility settling onto her shoulders. She had made a promise for Morthal to do her part for Ilara. That promise now felt like a chain around her neck, dragging her down into depths she wasn't prepared to explore.
We need a strategy this time.
Doreen insisted as they gathered around Karma's hastily sketched map of the lighthouse area.
Last time we just blundered in and
Morthal died. The unspoken words hung in the air between them. Zyra swallowed hard and focused on the practical matters at hand.
I can cast mage armor on Ilara.
She offered, turning to him. The elf was staring at her with unsettling intensity, but she maintained her composure as she wove the protective spell around him.
I could use it also.
Doreen said, already unbuckling her leather armor.
If I'm going to be dodging harpies and collecting treasures, I need to travel light.
Karma made a sound of disapproval.
Relying on illusion rather than proper protection.
He said, running a hand over his own chainmail.
Typical.
Something in his tone drew Zira's attention. She turned toward him, irritation flaring.
It's not an illusion,
She corrected.
It creates a real protective field of magic. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't effective.
Karma's eyes narrowed slightly.
Miss Darkmire, I'm well acquainted with the limitations of arcane shortcuts. In my experience, nothing replaces good steel.
Your experience is limited then.
Zira replied, unable to help herself.
Magic has saved all our lives countless times.
And yet it didn't save Morthal, did it?
Karma's words were soft but struck like a blade. Zira felt the blood drain from her face. She opened her mouth to reply but found no words. Behind her, Doreen cleared her throat awkwardly, still waiting for the spell that Zira had completely forgotten about in the face of Karma's barb. Before the silence could stretch any further, Balin interrupted with surprising practicality.
Got an idea for those harpy songs and banshee screams,
He said, producing a lump of candle wax.
Plug your ears with this. Worked in the mines when the foreman wouldn't shut up.
That's actually quite clever.
Doreen said.
Will that even work against magical sounds?
Zyra asked, grateful for the change of subject. Balin shrugged.
Won't know till we try, will we?
As they continued planning, ideas were proposed and discarded in rapid succession. Zira suggested using a climbing potion to flank the archers. Ilara wanted to lead a night infiltration with Balin, leveraging their superior vision in darkness, but Balin firmly refused to go anywhere alone with Ilara, whose fragile grip on reality was becoming increasingly apparent to everyone. Karma, apparently tired of the endless deliberation, abruptly rose to his feet.
Enough talk,
He declared.
Horror does not reward hesitation.
Without another word, he began striding toward the path that led to the lighthouse. For a moment, no one moved to follow him. Zyra exchanged glances with Doreen, seeing her own uncertainty reflected there. A heavy sigh escaped her lips as she stood.
Morthal would have gone after him,
She said, though her voice betrayed her reluctance. The moment she took her first step, Ilara leapt to his feet with startling speed. He positioned himself directly in front of Zira, his gaunt frame suddenly seeming larger as he inserted himself between her and the path ahead.
I'll protect you.
He whispered.
Nothing will harm you this time.
Well,
Balin grunted, hauling himself to his feet with exaggerated effort.
perhaps I'll get a ballad written about my demise, the dwarf who should have stayed in bed.
The narrow path wound toward the coastline. With each step, the lighthouse loomed larger, its silhouette a grim reminder of Morthal's fate. Zira felt cold sweat beading on her forehead, despite the chill in the air. Her hands trembled, and she clenched them into fists to still the motion.
You're pale as a ghost.
Doreen murmured, falling into step beside her.
Are you all right?
Just cold.
Zyra lied, forcing a smile that felt brittle on her face. In truth, every crash of the waves sent images flashing through her mind, Morthal falling, disappearing beneath the dark water, his body washing up on the shore.
Liar.
Doreen said, but her voice held no malice.
It's okay to be scared, you know.
As they reached the shore, they found the massive crab they had encountered before, now dead, its enormous shell cracked open. Something or someone had torn through its tough exterior and devoured what lay within.
Poor thing.
Zira murmured, remembering its plaintive requests for help, finding its stolen shell.
We failed it too.
Eventually, we fail everyone.
Ilara replied philosophically.
Yeah, nature of the business.
Added Doreen. Karma paused at the entrance to the stone tunnel. This natural passage was the only way to access the lighthouse, and it was also the domain of the Banshee, who had attacked them before. Inside the tunnel, partially illuminated by the gray daylight, lay a corpse in black armor, slumped beside the doorway that led to the Banshee's cave. Without hesitation, Karma continued forward, entering the tunnel with Talon. Ilara followed with equal determination, his hand still clutching whatever lay hidden in his cloak. Neither seemed concerned about the Banshee that had nearly killed them all during their previous visit. As Zyra approached the tunnel, a spectral form coalesced before her, a woman with hollow eyes and a mouth stretched wide in eternal anguish. The Banshee blocked the path between Ilara and Zira, her ghostly form vibrating with rage. Terror gripped Zira's heart, squeezing until she could barely breathe. All she could see was Morthal's pale, lifeless face staring back at her from the shadows of her memory, eyes empty, skin ashen. A scream tore from her throat as she turned to flee. She pushed past Doreen and Balin, back toward the relative safety of the beach.
Zira!
Doreen called after her, but made no move to follow. Instead, she faced the Banshee.
We've met before.
She said calmly, stepping forward.
We're here to help, to return what was stolen.
The Banshee paused, a recognition dawning in her eyes and her wail subsiding to a keening moan. She fixed her hollow gaze directly on Doreen for a long moment, as if searching for something in her face, then drifted backward toward her chamber, her spectral form fading into the darkness. Doreen's words seemed to reach her, just as they had during their previous encounter. Taking advantage of the moment, Doreen quickly moved to the corpse and removed a coin pouch from its belt, tucking it inside her shirt before anyone could notice.
Look,
She said to Balin, who had come up beside her.
another Tiamat amulet, like the one we found in the Red Wizard's tent.
Balin leaned in, his bushy eyebrows drawing together.
Oh, they are connected. The cult, the lighthouse, all of it.
A quick search of the corpse revealed also a letter, which Doreen quickly read aloud.
Kael'thar, the heart of Talos must be secured to complete the awakening of Voragax. The storm worshippers' ritual is of no consequence. Let them exhaust themselves in their pathetic devotions and battling the heroes. Strike when the tower is weakened.
She folded the letter carefully and tucked it away.
Nesnar again.
And the dragon.
Balin said grimly. Zyra had mastered her fear enough to return to the group, and they continued to the steep path that led up to the lighthouse itself. From this vantage point, they could see two archers positioned atop the hill near the lighthouse, their bows trained on the approaching group. Arrows whistled through the air, but the distance was too great for accuracy. The real danger came from above. A harpy took flight from its perch atop the lighthouse, its wings unfurling like tattered sails as it began to sing its enchanting melody. Thanks to Balin's foresight with the candle wax, the harpy's song fell on deaf ears. Frustrated, it swooped down, landing on the stairs that led up to the lighthouse, blocking their path and preparing to strike with its talons. Karma uttered a prayer to Hor, invoking a bless spell upon himself, Doreen, and Elara. He briefly considered including Zira in the blessing, but decided against it after gazing over her appearance. The harpy wasn't prepared for the coordinated attack that followed. Elara loosed an arrow from his longbow, its shaft finding home in the creature's wing. Doreen's short bow sang, and her arrow struck true as well. Zira, her fear momentarily forgotten in the heat of battle, hurled a firebolt that sizzled through the air and caught the harpy's feathers alight. Screeching in pain, the harpy retreated behind the hill, trailing smoke and blood.
Charge to the top!
Karma commanded, already sprinting up the stairs with surprising speed for a man in chainmail. Doreen was close behind him, her lighter frame allowing her to take the steps 2 at a time. The archers above fired again, their arrows clattering harmlessly against the stone steps. Halfway up the climb, a terrible realization struck Zira. She had never completed the mage armor on Doreen. Distracted by Karma's remarks and the planning, she had left her friend virtually unprotected against the dangers ahead.
Doreen!
She shouted, running after her.
Wait! Your armor! I never finished the spell!
But with their ears plugged with wax, her warning went unheard. Panic fueling her steps, Zira pushed herself harder, her lungs burning with the effort. She was not a runner, but fear for Doreen drove her forward. Finally, gasping for breath, she caught up to Doreen halfway up the staircase.
Your armor!
She panted, grabbing Doreen's arm.
I forgot! I never cast it!
Understanding dawned on Doreen's face, followed quickly by alarm as she glanced down at her unprotected form.
Well, shit,
She muttered, plucking the wax from one ear.
I'm so sorry.
Zyra said, already weaving the spell with trembling hands.
I got distracted, and then everything happened so fast.
Just cast it now,
Doreen interrupted pragmatically.
before I become the first verse in Balin's ballad.
From further up the stairs, Karma glanced back, taking in the scene with a knowing smirk. Far behind them all, Balin struggled valiantly against the natural limitations of dwarves. They were not built for running, especially not up steep lighthouse stairs, his face reddened with exertion, sweat pouring down his brow despite the cool wind.
By Moradin's hairy balls!
He wheezed, finally collapsing onto a step to catch his breath.
They can't. Just wait for me.
As Karma reached the summit, the true scope of their challenge became apparent. The archers hadn't retreated. They had regrouped with reinforcements. 4 half-orc warriors now stood guard at the lighthouse doors, their bows discarded in favor of massive, cruel-looking clubs.
For Hor!
Karma shouted, charging the nearest half-orc with talon raised high. Steel met flesh with a sickening sound, and the battle was joined. Outnumbered, Karma soon found himself surrounded, fighting with grim determination as blows rained down upon his armor. Doreen arrived moments later, knocking, drawing, and releasing in one fluid motion. Her arrow found its mark in a half-orc's shoulder, the impact spinning the brute halfway around with a roar of pain. Blood sprayed across the stone as it staggered back, wounded but enraged. Zira and Ilara were still a few steps behind, racing up the final stretch of the winding cliffside path. Above them, the lighthouse's sickly green beacon pulsed like a malevolent heartbeat. For Zira, each pulse drew her closer to something ancient and wrong that chilled her to the bone. For Ilara, each pulse drew her closer to a threat that must be eliminated at all costs.
Protect her,
Whispered Lily from the folds of his cloak.
Make her ours. Kill them all if you must.
Balin, still resting on the steps below, thought he'd glimpsed movement along the shoreline, likely just shadows playing tricks on his tired eyes. Then a sudden lightning flash shattered the darkness, illuminating the coastal cliffs with harsh clarity. His suspicions crystallized into dread. A group of figures in the black armor had appeared on the stone bridge, advancing methodically toward the lighthouse. Their armor gleamed dully in the stormlight, each breastplate bearing the unmistakable 5-headed dragon symbol.
"By the 9 bloody hills,"
he muttered, his weathered hand instinctively tightening around his glaive as he forced himself back to his feet despite his exhaustion.
"Tiamat's orchestra come to join the ballad."
The storm clouds above the lighthouse darkened further, and lightning split the sky. The battle for the heart of Talos had only just begun, and already the scales were tipping.
Kryto Penman, Luskinton, Anna Finman, Gwythias Bryn.